thank Hashem that we're able to learn. Immediately, for Shlema, for Yechiel Nassim ben Sarah, Aaron David Alevi ben Mincha Lester, and Avram Rafal ben Sarah. Let's start Testament based by the Mishnah. Ein bein bama gedayla bama katana el psachim. We're talking about where they had a bama gedayla, an altar that wasn't in the Beis Hamikdash. This would be when they came in the desert. They had a mishkan. Okay, when they came into Eretz Yisrael, they set up something temporary, I think, in Shiloh, right?
Yeah.
And then in between Shiloh and Yerushalayim, there was Noiv and Givon, where it was two places. So what happens is, in Shiloh itself, that was considered a resting place for the Aron and for the Mishkan, and so you were only allowed to bring a sacrifice in Shiloh. But in these interim places, until they set up Shiloh, until Nov and Givon, you were allowed to have a bama katana, a private altar. So, and even though it was the main altar was in Nov and Givon, it was the original altar from the Mishkan. So, what's the difference between a bama gedayla and bama katana? Well, psachim. And an obligation offering needed to go to the great altar, to the bama gedayla. You couldn't do it in your backyard. Ze'aklal, and this is the rule. Kol shenidav v'nidav kara b'bama. Anything that's a private offering could be brought on bama katana. Yeah, they would have to go to Shiloh. Yeah. Anything that was a private offering, just a donation, I want to give something to Hashem, you could do it in your backyard. If it wasn't nidav v'nidav, it was some sort of obligation, it wasn't a donation, so then that had to go on the bama gedayla, had to go to the tabernacle or temple or whatever it was considered.
I read that the Samaritans didn't think that the temple in Yerushalayim wasn't legit.
Right.
Yeah.
Home Depot was out of
To buy a bama?
Yeah, it was real bummer.
Went to Lowe's, had them there. Less.
Psachim, the Gemara says, Psachim v'sulai. The only difference is the carbon Pesach. That's the only one that's brought on the main altar. Gemara says, Elikein Psachim. Anything that's similar to the Psachim. Now, what would that be? Well, anything that's an obligation that has a set time, which would mean all the carbon tmidim and musafin, all the daily offerings and the holiday offerings, all of those needed to be on the bama gedayla. Mani, who's the author of our Mishnah? We say Reb Shimon here, it's Reb Shimon. The Tanya was taught in a Bryce, Reb Shimon even the community that is using the bama gedayla, they're only bringing sacrifices that had a designated time. But let's say there would be an obligation that didn't have a designated time. Now, the example of that is if the congregation did a sin, so then they have a community offering. It's an obligation. But when do you bring it? There's no date for that. It's whenever they decided that it was a sin and they have to bring the sacrifice. So then, it wasn't brought on a bama gedayla and it wasn't brought on a bama katana. Where was it brought? Only in the Beis Hamikdash. It wasn't brought during those interim times of Noiv and Givon. It was only, or in it could have been brought in Shiloh. Shiloh was considered a resting place.
There was a Sanhedrin at that time.
Yeah. Let's say. Yeah. It was the days of David, right? When the ark was in Givon. Right? David didn't get a chance to build the Beis Hamikdash. So, and Shiloh was already They already left Shiloh. They have it in. That's when they had it in the temporary places. They were bringing.
What about
Okay.
Nov?
Nov as well. I forget how many years each one was. But...
Mhm.
New Mishnah. Ein ben Shiloh Yerushalayim. There's no difference between Shiloh and Yerushalayim except for in Shiloh you can eat kachim kalim. Those are the sacrifices that are normally eaten in Yerushalayim, but during the days of Shiloh, they ate it in Shiloh. And Meiser Sheni, which is also normally eaten in Yerushalayim, but in the days of Shiloh, they ate it in Shiloh. Cholaraya. Now, Shiloh didn't have a wall. So what would be the boundaries? Cholaraya, as far as you could see. Yerushalayim, they had a wall. At a wall, so the wall is a boundary. In both places, they did have a curtain that would border off the Azara. So it was either called Kalayim or it was called the wall. But in Shiloh, they had that as well. Kedusha Shiloh Yeshachre Heter. After Shiloh was destroyed, then there was a heter, permissibility, to be able to bring sacrifices on private altars. However, Kedushas Yerushalayim Einachre Heter. After Yerushalayim, there's no heter to bring on private altars. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I wasn't in Shiloh, but I was told that the archaeologists found pottery, clay pots, a lot of broken pots, like piles and piles of
Yeah, it
pots.
says in the modern day settlement of Shiloh, remnants of the Aron Kodesh were discovered, and the synagogue as well.
They said, what are all those clay pots? So it turns out that when you bring a sacrifice, the sacrifice, the just like kosher and non-kosher, the taste gets absorbed into the pot. And so if it's clay, then you can't kosher it because you only have 2 days to eat the sacrifice. So after the second day, the pot becomes treif because of the absorbed flavor. So they had to break those pots. Yeah. Becomes treif and not kosher, not usable. Okay.
Do you know who or what party made this decision about the human qualities of Jerusalem? Other than the political decision by Shlomo Ameli?
Let's see in the Gemara. It's machlekes. How serious this is? How like? Yeah, it's a good question. Yeah, are you familiar with Rav Amiel? Moshe Victor Amiel. This is the chief rabbi of Tel Aviv, and I think Belgium also, but Antwerp. But anyway, he wrote these very interesting books, and one of them he says that the Rambam forgot two of the Yud Gimel Ikrim. Which two? He said, first of all, that the Jewish people is the chosen nation. He says that should have been in the Yud Gimel Ikrim. The second one is that Eretz Yisrael is the chosen land. He's a big Zionist. But, that's a point, no? In the 13th. In Yigdal, you have to add in an extra sentence. Okay. Amar Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak says, Shemati shemakrivim bebeis Chanya bisman hazeh. I heard that you can bring a sacrifice in Beis Chanya. Beis Chanya was in Alexandria, I think. If you remember from Menachos, these two brothers, they were sons of Shimon HaTzadik, or descendants of Shimon HaTzadik, that one of them was jealous of the other one. So when they took over, the father passed away as a Kohen Gadol, one of the sons took over, the brother convinced him that he should do some ridiculous thing, that was considered the service. He should wear some leather clothing or something. Anyway, the people said, why is he doing this? So the brother says, oh, he promised his girlfriend or his wife or something that he's going to wear the clothing that she gave to him on the first day that he serves. And people were like infuriated. So they chased him and he ran away. Either he ran away or he said, I didn't do it, it was my brother. Or they chased the brother. It's two opinions over there. Whatever the case is, he ends up in Alexandria and he makes his own temple. So it's called Beis Chanya.
Was that for a while?
Yeah. Yeah. So
Is that the library with all the books that were
No.
burned?
no. This was the question is, what is Beis Chanai? Is it a house of Avodah Zarah or is it a house for Hashem? Was a question the Gemara asked. So Kasavar, first of all, according to Rabbi Yitzchak, Kasavar Beis Chanai lav Beis Avodah Zarah. You have to right away establish that he obviously holds that it was a house for Hashem. Now it wasn't on the right place, but it was a house for Hashem. The Kasavar, and he also holds Kedusha Rishani Kitchel Shaita V'Loi Kitchel Asalavai, that the sanctification of Eretz Yisrael and Yerushalayim and the Beis Hamikdash, I'm throwing it all together, even though it's not necessarily accurate, but was only for the time that it was existing. But once it's destroyed, the Kedusha goes off, which would allow everything else to the other places to have bamas, or to the Ksiv Kilei Basam Adata LaMenucha V'Lanachla, because you have not come until to the place of your resting and inheritance. Menucha zu Shilai. Where's the resting? That's Shilai. Nachla zu Yerushalayim. Inheritance is Yerushalayim. Makish nachla lemenucha. We'll make a comparison. Ma menucha yesh achrei heter, just like after Shiloh, the resting place. You were allowed to use a bama. Af nachla yesh achrei heter. Also after Yerushalayim, it's permissible, and you're allowed to bring sacrifices in other places. I forgot someone have a relative that her father was involved with the Spanish Portuguese synagogue in New York. Anyway, he got a call on Erev Pesach from the police. There was some Samaritan that was offering a sacrifice in the park. What's the big park over there in Manhattan, Central Park?
Wow.
He thought he was going to bring a Paschal lamb over there. I guess he didn't hold of Yerushalayim, so like he said,
Yeah.
so he was going to bring it over there. So there was this discussion about, like, is this what he's supposed to be doing? Okay, you have to open the Gemara. Amrulay, I don't know the outcome. I just remember she was telling me that Amrulay.
There are all these Obamas all over the world that look like, they have ramps, they have steps.
Yeah.
Like in Mexico and Peru. Is that after the destruction? Are there any connection between those?
Yeah, maybe there's from the tribes, the 10 tribes. Amrulay. Yeah, you got it.
Not rolling it out.
There was someone that thought the American Indians were the.
Right, yeah.
Amrulay.
Was it the Mormons or something?
They said to Rabbi Yitzchak, Amrit, did you really say this, that you can go to Alexandria and offer sacrifices? Amrulay La, you say I never said it. Amar Rava says, Holy Kim. That means like, like, oh my gosh. Amra, of course he said it. Kamrina Lemine, I even heard it from him. So my time at Kahadabe, so then obviously he retracted. So why did he retract? Mishum Kashid Rav Mari. Because of the question of Rav Mari. The Mas of Rav Mari has a question. It says in our Mishnah, Kedusha Shili Yeshacharei Heter. Kedusha Yerushalayim Menacharei Heter. It's mamish in the Mishnah. Rabbi Yitzchak is an Amira. He's a student of Rabbi Yochanan. How's he going to argue on this Mishnah? The Mishnah says that that after Yerushalayim, there is no allowance for sacrifices in other places. Yeah, by the Yom Yerushalayim, they didn't know if they had to bring the Pesach in Yerushalayim. You see, that was on the Temple Mount. Not necessarily you need an altar, but you have the place. The place is still there. So, Shlomo HaMelech offered the sacrifices across the whole. There was no room on the altar, so you used the whole floor of the Azara. So, but you don't actually need the altar. So now it becomes a question, because you have the Temple Mount. And also another problem. So we have another Mishnah. It says that when they came to Yerushalayim, the Bamis became forbidden. You can't use private altars. And there was never any permissibility. And that is considered nachala. When it says, you haven't come to the inheritance. Yerushalayim is the inheritance, and that's it. The Gemara says, well, Tanaihi. It's actually, you're quoting to me Mishnayos, but it turns out that it's not so simple. It's actually a machlekes. The Tanan or the Tanya, Amar Rabbi Lazar, I'm sorry, this is Rabbi Eliezer. It's Rabbi Eliezer ben Horkanus, the student of Rabbi Yechon ben Zakkai, that argues with Rabbi Yeshua often. Rabbi Eliezer says, Shemati, I heard that by the second base in Migdash, they were building the Heichal. They had to hang up curtains. Because there was a big delay in getting the temple actually built up. It wasn't like just like unfold it, pour cement. There was a big delay, 20-something years. Rashi says 22 years from when they had permission to build it till it actually got built, because it got stopped in the middle. But they were still using it, so they had to hang up these curtains, and then they would continue building when they got permission to. The Heichal, they hung up the curtains on the inside, and then they built the wall around the curtains. By the Azara, they hung up the curtains on the outside, and they built the wall inside the curtains. Okay. Rabbi Yeshua says, Shemati, I heard, Shemakriv and Afal bias. They didn't need anything. You can bring sacrifices even without a makeshift, even without the makeshift heichal. See, what Rabbi Eliezer was doing, he was creating a heichal by putting up curtains. And Rabbi Yeshua says, I heard that you don't need that. And you can eat the sacrifice even without the walls there, even without the curtains hanging. You're on the right place. Even the Aron wasn't there. Rabbi Yeshua is holding that the location hidden somewhere on the ground since Yeshio. He holds that the location is good enough. It has the original kedusha from before, and it's still the same. What happened to the walls and the heichal and the Aron, and it's all not there, but it's the holiness is still there. Location, right? Timing is also important, though. Kachikalim, my right. Kachikalim, my sesheni afpishein chayma. Kachim kalim. That means of minor holiness. That meant the other sacrifices, the peace offerings, and all of that. And the Meiser Sheni, which was the second tithe that was in the 3rd year and the 6th year, that was brought to Yerushalayim to eat, even without a wall around Yerushalayim, still permissible. Mipnei, and Rabbi Yeshua's opinion is Shekadusha Rishayna Kitchel Ashaita v'Kitchel Asalavai. Once it was sanctified, that continues to remain sanctified. The location. Michlal. But this implies the Rabbi Eliezer server like Kitchel Asalavai. That Rabbi Eliezer probably holds that it was like Kitchel. So you had to actually have the curtain up to recreate a sanctuary to be able to have the Kedusha return. So there's a machlaikis between Rabbi Shua and Rabbi Eliezer if Kitchel Ashaita Kitchel Asalavai, and that would explain why Rabbi Yitzchak possibly held that you're allowed to bring a sacrifice in Beis Chanya because the Kedusha left Yerushalayim. And so where is it? Wherever you want. Gemara says, Amalei Ravina Ravashi. Ravina says to Ravashi, Mimai, how do you know that that's the pshat in the machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Shua? Dilma the Kule Alma, maybe everyone holds Kedusha Sheni Kitchel Shaita v'Kitchel Asalavai. And there was the sanctification remained. Mar, my Deshmiele Kamar, Mar, my Deshmiele Kamar. They were just saying the historical fact. Did they have the curtains? Did they not have the curtains? There's nothing to do with Kedusha Rishayna or not. Has to do with where their curtains are. So then why would he need the curtains? What was he trying to do? It says, L'tznius Balma. That was just for tznius, for modesty. It wouldn't be appropriate that the person that's bringing in let's say lighting the menorah or doing the ketores or whatever it is, that everyone's watching him. So they put up curtains. It was done more private. Yeah, why is that better? The right, but in royalty, like they come out, they make their appearance. You don't see them all day. They hide, and then like once a year they come out, and so you're not supposed to be able to see everything. But that's supposed to be private. And then like it's like a show. Marching band. right here. Ella Kihani Tanoi. Okay, so the source that we were looking for to support Rabbi Yitzchak, we thought we found, but by saying that Rabbi Eliezer argues with Rabbi Yeshua, and we say that not necessarily is that a good source, because it could be that everyone holds Kedush Rishena Kidsha Lasud Lavai, and that wouldn't support Rabbi Yitzchak. Rabbi Yitzchak said that you're allowed to bring the sacrifice on Beis Chania. Yeah, the commentaries would say that that why did Rabbi Yitzchak change his mind was because of the comment that Ravina made to Rav Ashi, that how do you know that that's really a support? So, he lost the support. So then I thought he was following Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer. He lost the support. The dates don't match up though. Okay. Elakihani Tanoi, rather it's like the following Tanoim. The Tanya who's taught in the Brayso. I'm Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi. It's going to take us a few lines till we get to the end of this. Till we get to the point. Rabbi Shmuel Rabbi Yossi says, Lama manu chachamim eselu. There was a verse. The sages in Gemara Erechin said that there's 9 cities that had walls from the days of Yeshua ben Nun. Why did they count these cities? When the exiles returned, they found these v'kidshim, and they sanctified them. The first cities, those lost their holiness when they were exiled. They had to re-sanctify them.
Was it? I don't see where you say 7 cities. That's just 69.
You're going to see that there are 60, but the sages only counted 9. Right.
What does it mean to sanctify?
So originally, the original sanctification of the city was that they actually walked with the Aron around, and the Torah, the luches of the Torah that's in it, sanctified the areas. That's how Eretz Yisrael was sanctified.
What does that mean?
I'm sorry.
I'm asking.
Yeah, that's that the land becomes holy. Now, what's the halachic ramifications? That would be trumas and.
True in my
Right.
Agriculture is outside the city.
Right. They probably sanctified the borders. For a minute, but we have a problem, because here you're telling me what Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi holds. Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi is the son of Rabbi Yossi ben Chalafta. He's a friend of Rabbi. Yeah, he lived in Tzipori. Gemara tells us that there was a psak in Tzipori. The Gemara says it must be Rabbi Yossi. Gemara says no, it's Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi. They both lived there. So, Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi says there was only those cities. There was a whole border. All of these had these big cities with walls. They were fortified cities. So why did they say these? That when they came up from the exile, they sanctified them. The Gemara says, Kidshim, they sanctified them. Hashta. But you said they don't need to be sanctified. They came up and they counted them. So they didn't need to be sanctified, according to Rabbi Shmuel Bar Yossi. Why? Because the holiness from the original holiness remains. Not only these cities, whenever you get a tradition, now Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi holds exactly the opposite. He holds that the original holiness remains there and it never goes away. It's a contradiction. Kasha de Rabbi Shmuel ad Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Shmuel contradicted himself. So it says, well, Trei Tanai Alib de Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi. It's two opinions regarding what Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi holds. Aha. So now we have a source. We said that's Machlekes Tanoim. If the original holiness of Eretz Yisrael is still there, or of Yerushalayim, if it's still there, so Rabbi Yitzchak has a source because there is one opinion of what Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi holds. We said it's Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi. We meant Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi. The Tanya was started in a brayso. Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi. We had this earlier. It says the word loy is spelled with a vav and an aleph. So we're coming to tell me that even though it doesn't have a wall now, but because it had a wall earlier, so that's going to be counted. That means that the original walls, the original cities, that's the holiness remains. So that would be Rabbi Shmuel, that would be Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi. Yeah, apparently Rabbi Yossi had 5 sons. We asked about this yesterday, 2 days ago. Rabbi Yehuda bar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Elazar bar Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shmuel bar Rabbi Yossi. I don't know the other ones. Okay. Now we start Masechtas Megillah. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh. Yeah, that's what we're waiting for. 10 pages. Sorry, introduction. You know, you go to these classes, and the first 3 classes are just telling you what they're going to do. And then they start, and there's only 1 class left. Okay.
So on the wall, what's the conclusion on the wall? He retracts himself. So
yeah. So he did have a support. He did have a support to say what he said because there was an opinion, but he retracted. And he holds afterwards that the holiness of Yerushalayim or the Beis Hamikdash is still there.
Yeah, it says that when they came back from Babel, they discovered these and enumerated them. I mean, like they discovered the walls.
Probably the cities.
The cities. Oh.
The cities that had walls.
Oh, so they found out that those were walls from Yerushalayim.
Right. Okay. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh, Amar Rab Levi, B'teimer Rab Yonasan. 2 names that are associated with the Gadata. The following is a tradition from the men of the Great Assembly that whenever it says Vayihi, it means it's something bad. Yeah, we'll see. Like it's a play on the word vai. It's like oy vai, you know, like the woe in the English woe is a vai. Right, a vai. Okay, so it means a difficult time. Vayihi b'mei Achashverosh hava Haman. In the days of Achashverosh, it was that Haman. Vayihi b'mei Shveita Shoftim, in the days of Elimelech. Remember when they in the book of Rus, Havarav, it was a famine. This was right before the flood. When they traveled, they wanted to build a city. This is by the Taraflaga, the dispersion. Was the days of Nimrod, right? Amraphel is Nimrod. That was the war when they took light. Asub Malchama, they did a battle. This is when Yeshua gets told off by the angel that he didn't have them, they missed the sacrifice and they didn't study Torah. Remember, we had that Gemara before. So Vayhi Hashem es Yeshua Vayimalu b'nei Yisrael. The Jewish people sinned. This was by someone took from the spoils of Yerichai. Achan, right? Yeah. Vayhi ish echad min arasayim Chana didn't have children over there, it says. Shmuel got old, his sons did not follow in his path. David was maskil, smart, Hashem was with him, and Shaul suspected David. Was David sat in his house? Hashem tells him that you can't build a house. You can't build a base of English. Okay. You have a bunch of negative things with Vayehi. Gemara says, it was on the 8th day, and the 8th day is referring to the construction of the Mishkan. Vitanya was starting in the Brisa. Hashem was rejoicing. It was like the day that the heavens and earth were created. That's the comparison. It says, it's like the creation of the world. Gemara says, whoa, 1 second. Nadav and Avihu died. It wasn't such a great day. That's why Vayehi. I'm sorry. It was on the 8th day. You have a pasuk in Malachim that Shlomo was going to build a base of Mikdash. It was 480 years from the Exodus. That Yaakov saw Rachel, that he loved her. We have the creation of the world. That looks like a good thing. The second day, the third day, we have a lot of Vayehis that all are good. Amar Ravashi. Ravashi answers, it must be Ela Amar Ravashi. Rather, Ravashi answers, Kol Vayehi. When it says Vayehi, Ikahacha, Hachi Vikahachi. Some of them are good, some are not. It doesn't tell you anything. It's not a good experiment, Vayehi. It's a good experiment, but the results are that you get both. Vayehi Bimei. That's a different story. It was in the days. That's already something negative. That's a difficulty. Chamisha Vayehi Bimei Havu. There's 5 Vayehi Bimeis. You have to look this up in the concordance. Vayehi Bimei Achashverosh. That's 1. What we said was Haman. Vayehi Bimei Shvaita Shaiftim. That's by Rus. That's when the famine was. They left. They went to Moav. Vayehi Bimei Amraphel. That was the war with the 4 kings and the 5 kings. And Vayehi Bimei Achaz. Okay. And Vayehi Bimei Yoyakim. Those were all difficult times. Is all of that from Yeshaya? Yeah. Vayehi Bimei Achaz is Yeshaya, and Vayehi Bimei Yoyakim is Yirmiyah. Okay, Amar Rab Levi. Rab Levi says, Davar zeh meseres biyadenu me'aveseinu amitz v'amatzia achem hava. Amitz is the father of Yeshaya. Yeshayahu ben Amatz, right? And Amatzia was one of the kings of Yehuda. So what it's saying here is that Yeshaya was a nephew of the king of Yehuda. It's also a father-in-law, Chizkiah. But they were brothers. Micah Mashmalon, what are you coming to teach me? What are you telling me? What's the point? It says, Kiadam Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani Amar Rabbi Yonasan. It's coming to tell me what Rab Shmuel bar Nachmani said in the name of Rabbi Yonasan, that Kol Kala Shitznua Beis Chamea, Zeichav Yetz Mimena Malachim Unaviyim. That if there's a bride that's modest in her father-in-law's house, that's where they would live when they would get married. Until the son-in-law got a job, so till the husband. But so
We don't do that today, right?
depends where you go. Ifkest, right? That's what it's called. So it's a Yiddish word for being supported by the in-laws. Ifkest, lept ifkest. So any kala that's modest in the father-in-law's house. So from her will come out kings and prophets. Minalan, where do we know this from? Mitamar. It's from Tamar the Ksiv. By Yehuda v'Yachshvel. Yehuda saw Tamar on the side of the road, and he thought that she was a prostitute. He kisses up and down because she covered her face. The Gemara says that's surprising. Because she's modest, he thought she was a prostitute. She covered her face. That sounds. It sounds like the opposite. Ela mishum the kitzah pnei beis chamel v'lehav yadala, because she always covered her face in her father-in-law's house, in Yehuda's house. He never saw her. So, because of that, now he sees her without her face covering and says, "Who could that be? I don't know who that is." Zachsav, he didn't even know what she looked like. So Zachsav yatzim mimena malachim unaviyim. Yeah. So because of that, came out of her kings and prophets. Who are the kings? Malachim is mi David. That's from David. And Nevi'im. Who are the Nevi'im? Amar Rab Levi, Maseres Biyadenu, Me'aviseinu, Ametz Ramatz Yachem Hayo, Uksiv Chazen Yeshayahu ben Amitz. So Amatzia comes from David, it comes from David, but comes from Tamar. That's the point. Comes from because he's a king of Yehuda. And Amitz is the father of the prophets. So you see, the prophets and kings.
Question. I understand from Tamar's point. In those days, when we was doing this, like, that was okay. Pick up, sorry. Different vision of the others and the 12 tribes. But whenever I hear the story, oh, that was okay.
What do you mean? Throw them into a pit? Killing them is also okay.
No,
That's the whole part of Torah. Not the wonder. It's not.
It's not yeshivish.
so it's just. No, I don't know. Maybe it was
Practice.
mutar in those days because it wasn't a Jew and they could do those things. It was before it's not Torah. I mean, I never really got a straight answer. I get like,
You're not getting those for you.
I'm not gonna get one this one. Okay, we're on live.
You're gonna take that one.
Forget it.
Right.
Question retracted.
But what it says is that there was an angel that pushed him. Yeah. Now that could be into.
That push one should have been.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you're looking at one thing.
Yeah. What it means, the angel pushed him, that's a little bit unclear. Yeah, I told you we took a tour of the Ir David, So you go through, you roll up your pants, you walk in the water. It's really cool. They give you a little flashlight that you can see because it's pitch black in the tunnel. So it was this soldier that gives us the tour. It was this girl soldier giving us the tour. Anyway, she says Sancherev was on the mountain, and he looks over. He says, but a mysterious plague came and killed out 185,000 soldiers. This the guy was with me. He says it wasn't a plague, it was a Malach Hashem that says in the pasuk. So she says that's what we call a plague. Yeah. Well, secular view on it. Okay, fine. V'amar Rab Levi, you hear what I'm saying? The angel pushed. Okay. V'amar Rab Levi, davazem aseris biyadenu mi'aviseinu, makim arim eina min amida. Rab Levi says that we have a tradition that the place of the Aron is not part of the calculation of the room. Tanya Nami Hachi, we even have a brisa for this. It says Aron Shas Moshe Yeshlei Eser Amas Achol Ruach. That's a problem. The Aron was 2.5 cubits by 1.5 high. But if you measure, if the whole room was 20 amas and it's 10 from each side of the Aron, so then you're missing the 2.5 that are in the center. It doesn't work like that, right? So, Uksiv, and also it says that within the curtain was 20 amas. That's not going to fit. Uksiv, and it also says knafa kruva echad eser amas, knafa kruva echad eser amas. That the kruvim went from wall to wall the kruvim that Moshe made, not on top of the small ones on top of the Aron. Moshe made these large kruvim, not Moshe, the Shleima made these large kruvim, not Moshe, Shleima made these large kruvim. They were 10 amas each from the wingspan. So Aron Gufei Hechavikoi. So where was the Aron if the room is 20 amas and it's 10 amas from each side? I don't think the question is from the wings of the kruvim. That's just telling me the size of the room, because the Aron could have been under the wings. The wings didn't have to take up the whole thing. Elalav Shmamina B'nei Sayayim, it must be that it was a miracle. It didn't take up space. And nimna nimnois, right? You measure it 2.5 amas, and then when you measure the room, it doesn't count.
So the Aron didn't take up any space. Yeah, they show you the picture.
Of the Aron without space?
No, the Aron is under the wings. That's right.
Oh yeah,
He
so
said,
it would fit under.
But it's
Very interesting. Rabbi Yonason pasach le pischa lahai pashta mihacha. When Rabbi Yonason starts to teach Megillah Esther, so he opens with an introduction. He says, "V'kamti aleim, I will stand up on them. V'chrati lebavel, I will cut off from Babylonia shame, their name, v'she'er, and a remnant, v'nin, and a descendant, v'nechad, and a descendant, grandchildren, or whatever. Nu'um Hashem, says Hashem." So what's Hashem doing to Bavel? It says shame. It's going to cut off the name from Bavel. Zehaksav, the Babylonian writing will disappear. She'er zeloshen, the Babylonian language will disappear. Nin zemalchus, the kingdom will go away. V'nechad, and the grandchildren, zevashti, Vashti will lose her position. So what are we talking about? We're talking about the Persians taking over the Babylonians. That he's about to start teaching Megillah Esther, and he starts with his introduction. Okay. Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmani pasach la pischa l'bahei pashta mehacha. Reb Shmuel Bar Nachmani, he would open with the following: Tachas hanatzitz yala b'rosh. Instead of the thorns will grow a cypress, I think, b'rosh. Tachas hasirpad, under the nettles. In place of the nettles, yala hadas will grow myrtle. Tachas hanatzitz, instead of the thorns, tachas haman arasha shasatzme avodah zara. That Haman made himself into an avodah zara. D'ksiv b'chol hanatzutzim b'chol hanahalulim. How does it translate that pasuk? All the thorns.
And upon all the thorns, yeah, and upon all the
Brambles. Okay. Yala b'rosh will grow a b'rosh is a cypress or a cedar. What does it say?
said Cyprus.
Cyprus, good. Okay, so what is Bereish? Zem Mordechai. That's Mordechai. Shnikar Reish l'chala b'samim. Because Mordechai is the head of all the spices. Shnemar bata kach l'cha samim. Reish. Take the spices. The first one is Mardurar. Mardurar. Okay. Yeah, the hadas is the myrtle. But in place of the nettle will grow, in case of the nettle will grow myrtle, but in place of the thorns will grow a brush. Yeah. And the Targum says on Mardurar, which is a type of myrrh, is that how it's pronounced? Maridachi, which is the word miridachia, which is Mordechai. Tachas asirpad, instead of the nettle, tachas Vashti Rasha, Basmaneshal Nebuchadnezzar Rasha. In place of Vashti, the granddaughter of the wicked Nebuchadnezzar, Shasaraf Refidas Beis Hashem, that burnt the ceiling of the house of Hashem, Iksiv Refidas Yizav, that says the ceiling was gold. So Yala Hadas will grow the myrtle. Who's the myrtle? Is Esther Hatzadekas. Shenikar Sadasa. Esther is called Hadassah. Shnemar v'yi'aymin es Hadassah. That Mordechai raised Hadassah. V'haya la Hashem l'shem is at the end of the pasuk. in Yeshaya. Yeah, and Hashem will have the name Zu Mikra Megillah. That's referring to the Megillah La Isailam as the everlasting sign. La Yikaris will not be cut off. Eli Yimei Purim. This is the days of Purim. Let's leave it over here. Okay, Yeshua ben Levi.